A gracious good day to one and all, once again. 'Tis I, Norton the First, by grace of God, Emperor of the United States and Protector of Mexico. Back with you all once again for episode number 157 of Emperor Norton's fantastic history vlog. Today is October 21st, 2020, our 219th day under COVID-19. Oh, my epaulets are messed up. Ooh, you can't have that. Programming notes. We'll be doing the show today, tomorrow, and Friday. We'll then have the Countess's show on Saturday, and then we'll be off for a week. And we'll return that first week in November with our new format, which is going to be a longer, probably about equal to today because we're covering 5 days. That will cover 7 days. And instead of looking back, we'll look forward into the future on our dates that we're doing on this date in history, births, deaths, etc. So look forward to that. But we have to attend to some imperial business that will take us away from all of you. Well, let's begin with our national days. Starting with the 17th of October, it was Mulligan Day. So I guess we get to do it over again. Wear Something Gaudy Day. The 18th, No Beard Day. We like this one too much to ever get rid of it. The 19th, National Seafood Bisque Day. Could you get more specific than that? It is International Gin and Tonic Day. Oh, we like that. National Evaluate Your Life Day. Life is good. And moving on to the 20th, it is International Sloth Day. Yesterday was. I don't know if you saw the story in the newspapers recently, but some of the animals at the zoos were getting bored. So they decided to pair them up in odd combinations to see what would happen, but it wasn't dangerous or anything. And the most successful was when they put the sloths with the dolphins. Both were equally entertained by the other. Look that story up. It's a very nice story. And International Chef's Day. Say hello to Chef Joseph. The 21st, Count Your Buttons Day. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 14, and there's 2 in the back, 16. And Babbling Day. Well, that's every day for us. Moving on next to our Florida Man segment. Today in Florida Man, well, we had a couple, only 3 looked good, so we're doing them, starting with the 17th. Florida man with half a head arrested on attempted murder arson charges. I've seen the pictures. The whole front of his head is missing, about the eyebrows up. I don't know how he functioned. Anyway, the 18th, Florida man shot outside bar after rejecting shot inside bar. And the 21st, today, naked Florida man accused of killing suspected peeping Tom. Watch out in Florida. For our San Francisco stories, as we so often do, we will rely on John Ralston's wonderful book, This Date in San Francisco. We're going to do 4 today, which is kind of unprecedented, but they're all important. So we may just do a little bit on each of these so that it doesn't run too long today. We really try to keep the show below 30 minutes whenever possible. Oh, and by the way, welcome to our podcast listeners. So let's start with October 17, 1989, the Loma Prieta earthquake. It was the 3rd game of the '89 World Series, the Battle of the Bay, the only one to my knowledge, between the Oakland A's and the San Francisco Giants. The Giants weren't doing well. On Saturday, October 14th, the A's won 5-0, following with a 5-1 win on Sunday. Monday was a break. Travel, allowing Major League representatives, journalists, players, and fans to move to San Francisco. Oh, what a journey. Oaklanders were already confident that the A's would sweep the series in 4 games, making them world champions by Wednesday. At 5 p.m. on Tuesday, October 17, 1989, over 60,000 people were settling into Candlestick Park. The game was scheduled to begin at 5:15. Players were warming up on the field. Giants infielder Chris Spear was talking to one of the Gatlin brothers who would sing the national anthem. About 4 minutes past 5, windows in the boxes below the stadium's second deck trembled violently. The light towers swayed, cracks opened in the concrete upper deck. Chunks of concrete fell. Some people bolted for the exits, but their way was blocked by others still entering. Baseball fans all over the country who had tuned into the World Series saw the United States' first televised earthquake. After the shaking stopped, the public address system advised people in the upper deck that they might have to evacuate. Then the electricity went off and there were no more announcements. After 40 minutes, the game was officially declared postponed. 5:04 p.m. was a bad time for an earthquake. People leaving work in elevators felt cars sway against elevator shafts. Roads shook below the commuter drivers, power going out all throughout the Bay Area. The most shocking news was the Bay Bridge had collapsed and that double-deck section of Highway 880 in Oakland had collapsed. That's where most of the deaths occurred. Many cars in the lower deck were flattened as if they had been in a compactor. In San Francisco, the Marina District suffered most. Sands, rocks, and debris from the 1906 earthquake had been laid on the tidelands to create the area of the 1915 PPIE, Pan-Pacific International Exposition. Actually, that's not true. It's parts of Russian Hill. The earthquake rubble ended up in China Basin. But that's a whole other story. Let's see. Fires broke out. Marina residents helped firemen lay hoses. 3 people died in the marina. South of Market, 5 people died in the collapse of a building at 6th and Bluxom Streets. Total deaths were about 67. The earthquake of October 17, 1989 registered 6.9 on the Richter scale, the biggest since 1906. Centered in the Santa Cruz Mountain near a lookout station atop a 3,700-foot peak that most people never heard of, it was named by geologist Loma Prieta after the peak. Moving on to October 18, 1897, the Chronicle and Examiner report the dedication of the Robert Louis Stevenson Monument in Portsmouth Plaza. Let's see. Robert Louis Stevenson died suddenly, aged only 44, in his home in American Samoa on December 3rd, 1894. Sculptor Bruce Porter, who had known Robert Louis Stevenson from the time he arrived in San Francisco ill and broke, heard of his death on January 5th, 1895. Deeply moved, Porter designed a monument consisting of a granite shaft surmounted by a galleon inspired by the ship Hispaniola in Treasure Island. Architect Willis Polk, who designed like everything, liked the idea and suggested a subscription campaign. By the date of dedication, $1,500 had been raised, with $250 owed. And it was dedicated in a ceremony with the playing of bagpipes, and then Bruce Porter introduced speakers. Mayor James D. Phelan concluded the program, quoting from the Wrecker, in which RLS said San Francisco is the most interesting city in the Union. RLS was a son of Scotland, its greatest writer of English prose and of notable poetry, a famous but underrated writer. In the short time in which he was here, Robert Louis Stevenson became one of San Francisco's own. The Portsmouth Square monument to him was the world's first, even before the one at St. Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh, Scotland, Stevenson's home city, by 8 years. Moving on to the Portola Festival, October 20th, 1909. 3 years after the great San Francisco earthquake, the city was still rebuilding. As early as 1908, however, plans were laid for a festival in honor of the city's recovery. Portola himself, portrayed by Santa Barbara's Nicholas Covarrubias, was the festival Grand Marshal because the festival had been called in San Francisco. Queen Virginia Bogue reigned. The festival began on Tuesday, October 19th with Portola Covarrubias' arrival by boat at the foot of Mission Street. Received by loyal subjects, he immediately led a parade up Market Street to Van Ness Avenue, looped down Golden Gate back to Market, down Market to Stockton, and on to Union Square, where he was presented to Queen Virgilia. Pardon me, I got that name wrong. A 3-hour band concert followed as Portola and the Queen were guests of honor at the Hotel St. Francis for a luncheon. Games and receptions were held, culminating with an invitational ball at the Fairmont Hotel for officers of visiting warships. During 5 days, October 19 to the 23rd, the Portola Festival drew about 500,000 visitors. And it was, the festival was a statement to the world that San Francisco is recovering from the terrible ordeal, pardon me, of April in 1906. It was a rehearsal for the Panama Pacific International, International Exposition of 1915. That's also where we get the Path of Gold lights on Market Street. Our final San Francisco story is from October 21st, 1985. Dan White commits suicide. Dan White was born in Long Beach in 1939 into an Irish Catholic family. Brought to San Francisco at age 2, he grew up in the Excelsior district. In 1977, the city charter having been recently changed to have supervisors represent districts rather than be at large, White ran for District 8 on the Board of Supervisors. He was elected on an old values platform, tough on crime, tax relief jobs, etc. But his campaign also referred to social deviance. White was elected along with Harvey Milk, possibly the first openly gay public official in the United States. No, he was not the first elected official of a major city in the United States. There were some previous to him, smaller cities. Where am I here? Yes, okay, here we go. And presumably one of the devious White warned about Harvey Milk was, they said. Just a year later, White resigned the Board of Supervisors for financial reasons after his family offered financial help. White asked Mayor George Moscone to reappoint him to the board. Moscone refused. On November 27, 1978, just before Moscone was to announce the appointment of White's successor, White shot Moscone dead in City Hall. He then went to Milk's office and shot him dead as well. After telling his wife what he'd done, White surrendered. He was put on trial for murder, but they used the diminished capacity defense known as the Twinkie defense. And he was convicted of involuntary manslaughter, which then caused the White Night riots to occur in both San Francisco City Hall and later a police riot in the Castro. White was sentenced to 7 years and 8 months in Soledad Prison, but served just 5. Paroled in 1984, he stayed in Los Angeles for a year. In 1985, he returned to San Francisco and found no place for him. He could not get a job and could not escape his past. On Monday, October 21st, after his wife had gone to her school teaching job, White connected a garden hose to the exhaust pipe of his 1970 Buick in the garage, sealed the windows with towels, and ran the engine. At 2 p.m., White's brother Tom found Dan White dead in the car with a note saying he was sorry for the trouble he'd caused, and that Tom would have to find him this way. So there you go. Let's move on to our other history for today. Starting with the 17th, 1850, Knickerbocker Engine Company number 5 is organized. That's the one that Lily Hitchcock Coit was such a fan of, and they gave her the fire helmet and a little badge to wear. 1888, Thomas Edison files a patent for the optical phonograph, the first movie. 1899, Sutro Railroad is sold to Robert F. Morrow for $215,000. I think that's the one that ran to the Cliff House. 1904, and this should have been a major story for today, really. We'll go into it more sometime. The Bank of Italy, later to become the Bank of America, opens its doors in San Francisco, founded by A.P. Giannini. That's a long story. As I said, maybe we'll go into that some other time. But that was at the corner of where the Scientology building is now, which would be Montgomery and Columbus and Washington Streets, if memory serves correctly. 1919, the Radio Corporation of America, RCA, is created as a subsidiary of General Electric. 1933, Albert Einstein arrives in the U.S. as a refugee from Nazi Germany. 1957, French author Albert Camus was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. What does an existentialist cow say? Camus! 1967, Hair premieres on Broadway, the musical. 1968, Bullet, directed by Peter Yates and starring Steve McQueen and Jacqueline Bisset, is first released. That famous chase scene, that does not take place entirely on Russian Hill. Some of it's there, but corners don't match up. Some of it's the marina, some of it's on Skyline Drive in Daly City. It actually starts off on Bernal Hill, here in Bernal Heights, where we record this vlog. 1979, Mother Teresa of Calcutta is awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Moving on to the 18th of October, in 1767, the Mason-Dixon line, the boundary between Maryland and Pennsylvania, is agreed upon. 1776, in a bar decorated with a bird tail in Elmswood, New York, a customer requests a glass full of those cocktails from bartender Betsy Flanagan, and that's where the word cocktail comes from. But there are other stories, of course. 1867, the Alaska Purchase. U.S. takes formal possession of Alaska from Russia, having paid $7.2 million. 1954, Texas Instruments Incorporated announces the first transistor radio. Oh, I forgot 1931, American gangster Al Capone is convicted of tax evasion. He serves quite a bit of his term on Alcatraz here in San Francisco. 1962, James Watson and Francis Crick and Maurice Wilkins win the Nobel Prize for Medicine for their work in determining the structure of DNA. Now, there's something that changed the world. 1968, police find 219 grains of cannabis resin in John Lennon and Yoko Ono's apartment. They are fined 150 pounds for marijuana possession. 1969, Jefferson Airplanes Paul Cantor, arrested for marijuana possession. 2017, U.S. Congressmember Frederica Wilson says President Donald Trump said to a bereaved Army family of Sergeant David Johnson, he knew what he was signing up for, but I guess it hurts anyway. Such great empathy. Moving on to the 19th, 1781, British forces under General Charles Cornwallis signed terms of surrender to George Washington at Yorktown at 2 p.m., ending the U.S. Revolutionary War. 1870, first African Americans, 4 of them, are elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. 1926, Russian Politburo throws out Leon Trotsky and his followers. 1953, the dystopian novel Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury is published in the U.S. 1968, the Golden Gate Bridge charges tolls only for southbound lanes. We charge people to enter San Francisco, not to leave. 1972, the musical Mother Earth opens at the Belasco Theater in New York City for 12 performances. That started at South Coast Repertory down in Costa Mesa. The Broadway version was produced by none other than Fox News founder Roger Ailes, and both the SCR, South Coast Repertory, and Broadway versions, I think the Broadway version, starred a young and rather rotund Tony Tennille. I saw it in Costa Mesa. 2003, Mother Teresa of Calcutta is beatified by Pope John Paul II. Moving on now to the 20th. 1803, the U.S. Senate ratifies the Louisiana Purchase. 1817, the first Mississippi showboat leaves Nashville on its maiden voyage. 1864, U.S. President Abraham Lincoln formally establishes Thanksgiving as a national holiday. 1929, the Bayshore Freeway opens in San Francisco, 101. 1959, Harry Belafonte sings Day-O, Day-O. Whoops, wrong key. Daylight come and me wanna go home. The Banana Boat song, yes. 1957, Walter Cronkite begins hosting the weekly documentary, The 20th Century. I remember it well. 1973, President Nixon proclaims Jim Thorpe the greatest athlete of the half century. Why not just say century? 1973, Queen Elizabeth II opens the Sydney Opera House. 1973, President Nixon discharges Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox and accepts the resignations of Attorney General Elliot L. Richardson and Deputy Attorney General William D. Ruckelshaus. I believe that was Black Friday and really the beginning of the end of Nixon's presidency. Well, that's arguable, I suppose. 1984, the wonderful Monterey Bay Aquarium opens in Monterey Bay, California. It's in an old sardine canning factory, Del Monte. 1998, comedian Richard Pryor is awarded the first ever Mark Twain Prize for American Humor. Moving on to the 21st, 1797, the U.S. Constitution, Old Ironsides, is launched in Boston. It's still there. 1805, the Battle of Trafalgar. British Admiral Horatio Nelson defeats combined French and Spanish fleet. Nelson is shot and killed during the battle. 1959, the Guggenheim Museum, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, opens in New York. 1967, tens of thousands of anti-Vietnam War protesters marched on the Pentagon, besieging the military headquarters for 2 days. I think that's when they attempted to levitate it. By the way, if you have not seen The Trial of the Chicago 7 on Netflix, highly recommended. 1991, 25 die in the Oakland Hills fire. The fire ultimately killed 25 people and injured 150 others. The 1,520 acres destroyed included 2,843 single-family dwellings and 437 apartment and condominium units. The economic loss from the fire was estimated at $1.5 billion. Is that the same day as the anniversary of the Loma Prieta? No, 4 days, but still not that long afterwards. Let us now move on to our births for today. Starting with the 17th of October, 1900, Jean Arthur, American actress. She was in Shane and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. 1902, Irene Ryan, Granny from the Beverly Hillbillies. Jen, your videos are ready. Not a very good one, I know. Sorry. 1903, Jerry Colonna, the comedian, is born in Boston, Massachusetts. 1903 also, Nathaniel West, American novelist, is born, wrote Day of the Locusts. 1914, Jerry Siegel, co-creator of Superman. 1915, playwright Arthur Miller, Death of a Salesman, The Crucible. 1918, Rita Hayworth, original name Margarita Cancino. She was in Gilda, CoverGirl, The Lady from Shanghai. 1920, actor Montgomery Clift, From Here to Eternity, Judgment at Nuremberg. 1921, Tom Poston, comedian, actor, was on the Steve Allen Show, and also Newhart. 1926, Beverly Garland was on My Three Sons. 1930, Jimmy Breslin, American author and columnist for the New York Post, Newsday, and The News. 1938, Robert Evil Knievel, American motorcycle daredevil, a Snake River Canyon jump that didn't go very well. 1947, one of my favorites, Michael McKean, American actor. He was on Laverne and Shirley. He was Lenny of Lenny and Squiggy. He was also in a wonderful group, the two of them, along with Harry Shearer, and one other person whose name does not come to my head, but the other guy who played Squiggy was Richard Beebe. Anyway, they were part of the Credibility Gap. He's also 1/3 of Spinal Tap, along with Harry Shearer and Christopher Guest. Just an absolute favorite. Very underrated, I think. 1948, George Wendt, who played Norm on Cheers. Everybody there knew his name. 1962, Mike Judge, cartoonist, Beavis and Butthead, and King of the Hill. 1963, one of my favorites, Norm Macdonald. He didn't like O.J. Simpson very much. 1968, Ziggy Marley, a Jamaican reggae performer, son of Bob Marley. 1972, rapper Eminem, Marshall Bruce Mathers III. Moving on to the 18th, 1898, Lottie Lenya, Caroline Wilhelmine Charlotte Blamauer, Austrian singer and actress, and also was married to Kurt Weill, who wrote Three Penny Opera, which she sang in. In fact, she's even mentioned in Mac the Knife. 1919, Pierre Trudeau, the 15th Canadian Prime Minister and the father of the current Prime Minister. 1926, truly one of the founders of rock and roll, Chuck Berry, who just passed away recently. Also 1926, Klaus Kinski, German-Polish actor, Aguirre, Ralph of God, Nosferatu the Vampire, etc. 1927, the actor George C. Scott, best remembered for Patton and Dr. Strangelove. Oh, he's so great in that. One of my favorites, also a very underrated actor, 1935, Peter Boyle, Did a very scary movie called Joe. If you've never seen it, well worth looking up. But he was also in Everybody Loves Raymond. Did everybody love Raymond? 1938, Dawn Wells, who was Marianne on Gilligan's Island. 1939, Lee Harvey Oswald, alleged assassin of JFK. I'm not going to go into details on that. 1931, Mike Ditka, NFL coach and tight end for the Bears. 1945, someone who's truly inspired me. In fact, my tours are dedicated to his memory, Huell Hauser. For those of you not from California, he's better known in Southern California than Northern California. He did a whole bunch of series on the PBS station, now formerly PBS, KCET, Visiting with Huell Hauser, all sorts of series. His entire body of work, he passed away a number of years ago. He donated to Chapman College in Orange County. They have digitized it and put it online for free, the Huell Hauser Archives. If you go to EmperorNortonTour.com, there's a link to them on there. Wonderful, wonderful series, a true lover of California history. Although he is from Tennessee, and his tagline was, "That's amazing!" As a matter of fact, he did a whole episode, well, half an episode on me, and the person speaking about us that day was Peter Moylan, who I seem to have lost track of. Peter, if you're listening or tuning in, drop us an email. He did an Emperor Norton tour at one time as well, long before I did. Took my tour, didn't tell me who he was or what he'd done. He was so impressed, he gave me his hat, his sword, and his coat, none of which I'm wearing at the moment, but Peter's a truly gifted historian. Hats off to Peter, although not his. Where are we? 1947, Laura Nero, singer-songwriter. 1951, Pam Dauber, actor, Mork and Mindy. She was Mindy, also my sister Sam. 1956, the great tennis player Martina Navratilova. 1960, Aaron Moran, actor, Happy Days, Joni Loves Chachi. 1960 as well, Jean-Claude Van Damme, the Belgian actor who's in Double Impact. 1961, Wynton Marsalis, gotta get that right, American jazz and classical trumpeter. He's won 9 Grammy Awards. Let's move on now to the 19th. 1891, Hal Wallace, the American movie producer, Maltese Falcon, Barefoot in the Park. 1903, Tor Johnson, who was a wrestler and actor, Plan 9 from Outer Space, among his movies. 1932, Robert Reed, who played the father, Mike, on The Brady Bunch. 1937, psychedelic artist Peter Max. 1944, Peter Tosh, reggae musician, real name Winston Hubert McIntosh. 1945, another particular favorite of mine, Divine, Harris Glenn Milstead. Actor, I say actress here, drag queen and international icon of bad taste cinema, John Waters' Pink Flamingos, Female Trouble, Multiple Maniacs, Lust in the Dust, Hairspray. Oh, what a great actor Divine was. Miss Divine a lot. And speaking of great actors, born the same day, the same year, John Lithgow. Easily one of my favorites. 1960, singer, actress Jennifer Holliday, who was in Dreamgirls. 1967, Amy Carter, the daughter of U.S. President Jimmy Carter. She's also a peace activist. They raised her well. Moving on to the 20th, 1632, Christopher Wren, English astronomer and architect of St. Paul's Cathedral. 1854, the poet Arthur Rimbaud. 1882, Bela Lugosi, the Austrian actor Dracula, also in Plan 9 from Outer Space, but he died during the filming. So if you ever watch the movie, and it's a horrible, horrible movie, but worth watching, if you ever see any scenes that's supposed to have Bela Lugosi, but the guy's got his cape up like this, that's another actor, because Lugosi had died. Whoops! In 1889, Margaret Dumont, American actress, and she was in a lot of the Marx Brothers movies. She was Groucho's comic foil on Day of the Races, Night at the Opera. Just saw Duck Soup the other night. It's said that she really didn't get their jokes. Whether or not she did, that's a matter of conjecture, but it seems to be that she didn't. What's really interesting is her final appearance was on the Hollywood Palace, which was hosted by Groucho that night, and she was elated after the performance, went home, went to sleep, and never woke up. But at least she died happy. 1907, American actor and radio television personality Arlene Francis, probably most famous for being a consistent contestant for the entire run of What's My Line, the game show. 1923, Herschel Bernardi, an actor, was on a series called Arnie, but you probably know him as the best as Charlie the Tuna. 1925, columnist Art Buchwald. 1927, American pop psychologist Joyce Brothers. 1931, Mickey Mantle, the great baseball player. 1935, the great actor Jerry Orbach. 1946, Connie Chung. Now, what's become of Connie Chung? We know she's still married to Maury Povich, but she hasn't been on TV much. She's a newscaster. Actually got her start on Channel 2, CBS, in Los Angeles. 1950, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. 1964, happy birthday to Vice Presidential nominee Kamala Harris. Now, I know there's been a lot of memes floating around for the last couple months saying it's her birthday. It's actually her birthday, so happy birthday to our next Vice President. Oops, I got partisan. 1971, Martha Stewart's best friend, rapper Snoop Dogg. Moving on to the 21st, 1833, Alfred Nobel, Swedish chemist and the inventor of dynamite, founded the Nobel Prizes. 1917, Dizzy Gillespie, American jazz trumpeter, the creator of bebop and modern jazz. And speaking of great musicians, 1924, Celia Cruz, Cuban singer, the queen of salsa. 1940, Manfred Mann, British rocker, the Mighty Quinn, and Blinded by the Light. 1941, the great guitarist Steve Cropper was, of course, famous for, oh God, it suddenly escaped me, the Blues Brothers singer. Soul Man! Play it, Steve. 1942, Judith Sheindlin, Judge Judy. Can we just put her on the Supreme Court? 1946, Lux Interior, the singer for the band The Cramps. 1949, Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel Prime Minister and currently under indictment for fraud. 1956, Carrie Fisher, Princess Leia in Star Wars, writer, Postcards from the Edge. Oh, she was wonderful. What a sarcastic wit she had. And what a tragic death, having a heart attack. She's in the hospital. She passes away, and then her mother, Debbie Reynolds, passes away the next day. They are buried together. I forget which cemetery. I'm thinking maybe Forest Lawn, Glendale, but I'm not positive about that. But there's a wonderful YouTube series called Hollywood Graveyard, which we highly recommend. And if you like that sort of thing, it's a great, great series to watch. Arthur Dark does a great job. Yeah, that's his name. And 1980, Kim Kardashian. Our deaths today, starting with the 17th of October, 1849, Frederick Chopin, the Polish-French pianist and composer. 1910, Julia Ward Howe, American poet and author of the Battle Hymn of the Republic. 1979, S.J. Perlman, American author and humorist and screenwriter, wrote for The New Yorker, wrote the screenplay for Around the World in 80 Days, for the Marx Brothers, Monkey Business, one of my favorites, and Horse Feathers. 1984, the great blues singer and composer Alberta Hunter. 1991, Tennessee Ernie Ford, American country music singer and actor, 16 tons, what do you get? Anyway. 2007, Joey Bishop, entertainer, comedian, and I believe the last member of the Rat Pack to die. 2009, Vic Mizzy. That name probably doesn't ring a bell unless you saw The Addams Family or Green Acres. He wrote the theme songs. 2019, the great member of Congress, civil rights advocate, Elijah Cummings. Moving on to the 18th, 1931, Thomas Edison, American inventor of the light bulb, the phonograph, motion picture camera. 1973, we're getting a lot of my favorites today, Walt Kelly, the American cartoonist, drew and wrote one of the greatest comic strips ever, Pogo. Great comic strip. 1982, Bess Truman, First Lady, died at the age of 97. 2000, Gwen Verdon, American actress and singer and dancer, Cotton Club, Sweet Charity. Oh, she was really, really great. Moving on to the 19th, 1745, Jonathan Swift, author and satirist, wrote Gulliver's Travels and A Modest Proposal, which we'll come to later. 1950, Edna St. Vincent Millay, the American poet, dramatist, and feminist, won the Pulitzer Prize. 1978, Gig Young, the American actor. They Shoot Horses, Don't They? It was one of his great movies. 2008, the fashion designer, Mr. Blackwell. He's buried in the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. Been to his grave. We were not very well dressed at that moment, however. 2010, Tom Bosley. He was on Happy Days, Murder, She Wrote. Moving on to the 20th, 1936, Anne Sullivan, the teacher who educated Helen Keller. 1964, Herbert Hoover, the 31st President of the United States. Oh, we're going over today, okay. 1977, Cassie Gaines was in Leonard Skinner, died in a plane crash along with Ronnie Van Zant and Steve Gaines. Oh, Freebird! I didn't bring my lighter. 1994, Burt Lancaster, the great actor from Spartacus, The Apartment, From Here to Eternity, and Elmer Gantry. 2006, the actor Jane Wyatt, Father Knows Best. 2010, American publisher of Penthouse magazine, Bob Guccione. 2011, Muammar Gaddafi, the dictator of Libya. 2014, the fashion designer Oscar de la Renta. Moving on to the 21st, the 1969, the great American writer Jack Kerouac, On the Road. 1970, John T. Scopes, the American teacher convicted for teaching evolution, Scopes monkey trial. 1984, the great French director Francois Truffaut. If you've never read his book of interviews with Alfred Hitchcock Truffaut, I believe is what it's called, or is it Truffaut Hitchcock? I think it's Hitchcock Truffaut. Great book. 1992, Jim Garrison, Louisiana District Attorney who investigated the JFK assassination. That whole story is in the Oliver Stone movie JFK. 1995, Maxine Andrews, one of the Andrews sisters, Boogie Woogie Billboard and Company B. 2012, George McGovern, American politician and presidential candidate in 1972. 2014, Ben Bradley, American editor of the Washington Post, pivotal figure in the Watergate scandal. Our quote today is from Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal. This is satire. I posted something the other day on Facebook and people did not get that it was satire. Even though it said at the top in very capital letters, satire, satire, satire. This is satire, not to be taken seriously. Okay, after that setup, I guess it better be good. Well, actually, it's bad. Here we go. I have been assured by a very knowing American of my acquaintance in London that a young, healthy child, well nourished, is, at about a year old, a most delicious, nourishing, and wholesome food, whether stewed, roasted, baked, or boiled, and I make no doubt that it will equally serve in a fricassee or a ragout. A child will make 2 dishes at an entertainment for friends, and when the family dines alone, the fore or hind quarter will make a reasonable dish, and seasoned with a little pepper or salt will be very good boiled on the 4th day, especially in winter. From Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal. Satire. So, just a few parting words before we sign off on this 40-minute vlog today. When we come back, we're going to try to keep them to 30 minutes. We won't go into as much detail on something. We'll probably leave some less important things out. So, if you would like to leave a tip for us, and we greatly appreciate all of our wonderful donors, this green screen, the microphone, all sorts of things that come from our generous donors. Here's the information for that. You can do a subscription through Venmo, a one-time donation through I always do that, through Patreon for a monthly subscription, one-time donations through Venmo or PayPal. For those of you on the podcast, drop an email to emperornortontour@gmail.com, or if you just want to communicate with us, anyone, please do that. And we will send you the proper information. If you would like more information about the tours that the Countess and I normally do, and we are restarting tours on November 7th, every Saturday at 11 a.m. from Union Square, limited to 10 people only by city regulations. You must wear a mask. You must socially distance. Anyone who does not want to do that, don't sign up for our tour because you will not be allowed to go. It's that simple. So go to emperornortontour.com. You can sign up from that. We have some sign-ups already, mostly thanks to Heather Knight's wonderful column in yesterday's San Francisco Chronicle. Hats off to Heather. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. So until we see you again, oh, don't forget to vote. Very important. We actually voted, and our ballot has been counted as of yesterday. Vote, 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 vote. So until we see you again, stay safe and stay healthy. But if you do go outside, wear a mask. This would all be over by now if we had not been stubborn and selfish and had worn masks over the previous, what is it now, 8 months, I think? Since, 8 months coming up. Since the beginning of all this on about November 16th. So nobody wants to wear a mask, okay? But we have to. It's very important to save lives. If you don't want to be responsible for killing people, wear a mask. But enough of rant for today. Don't take unproven cures that might kill you unless it is recommended by a doctor. Be kind to one another. Till we see you again, a gracious good day.